It's that relationship with yourself, right? Where like at the end of the week or the month, it was like, okay, something is missing, but it wasn't more projects. It wasn't a specific brand. It wasn't a specific financial goal. It wasn't, you know, like it was none of that stuff. It was just like, it's just not, I noticed it wasn't lighting me up.
Hi, I'm Phoebe.
Hi, I'm Jacque.
And welcome to Do You Ever Feel Like?
Where we ask the questions that everyone's thinking and no one's answering.
And today on the podcast, we have another guest. We have our friend Flory on the pod. We kind of get into it a little bit at the beginning, but we have all had the like sweet opportunity to work together a couple of times in collaboration. And I'm wrong. We actually have worked together like as a trio.
Oh, right. Yeah.
We did a panel. We did a panel, which you can actually go back and listen to. Beyond the Binary. It was a panel for artists and boundaries, and it was great.
We love Flory.
All that to say is we love Flory.
Yes. We love Flory. Flory, you have definitely heard us refer to Flo and Flo's work and Flory around rest and other various things in the pod before.
Yes.
So if you're an avid listener, we have brought up Flo before.
Yes, we have brought up Flory and the Arrested Revolution 100%.
Yes.
Before.
I loved the conversation. Flo has such like it like doesn't even matter what we would have prepared. Like it literally like it does not matter. And it was such a gift. So
it was foolish of us to try to prepare.
Yes. Foolish.
And I think this actually speaks to our conversation that we had as well about kind of actually embodying the process of a thing and not going into something with expectations or a specific outcome. Yeah. Do you ever feel like playing is kind of the question that I think we really – and embodying the things that we say we value or say we not just value, do, believe in, strive for. Yeah.
Honestly, like have something to write with is my suggestion.
This is a good hiking podcast.
This is a good like – be in a space to hear it is what I would say. It's so juicy. It's so good. Yes. A little bit about Flory. Flory is a first-generation settler of Taiwanese and Dutch ancestry, born on unceded, ancestral, and traditional Tongva Territory. She is also a settler, continually learning as an uninvited guest on Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh lands in the Pacific Northwest. As a proud faculty instructor at the Lab of Meditation, offering trauma-informed meditation teacher training for people worldwide, she invites others to be in integrous businesses through strategic development and brand design. When not supporting others with real rest or resting herself, you'll find her moving and sweating, reading and learning, eating with people she loves, in lengthy discussions, sometimes debates. I love that. Drawing and documenting out in the sun and ocean, exploring different cultures, and machine tattooing sentiment and sigils. Sigils. Damn it. Sigils.
That's it. Without further ado, enjoy this conversation with Flory of the Arrested Revolution, of being a human, of being an artist, and of being a leader in feeling.
A leader in feeling and a diva.
And a diva.
I love it.
We just talk.
I love it, honestly.
We're doing like our very professional note checking and like voice memos back and forth today.
Yeah.
I was looking at my Channy app and it said today for like, your weekly forecast. It said Divas Unite. So
what?
I know, right? I was like, oh my God, what an auspicious timing. Divas Unite? Maybe that's will be the name of this episode.
I love
I
it.
love it.
It's also Venus Day, so happy Venus Day.
Yes, it's also
first one of
Venus Day.
December, right?
Well, thanks for coming on the pod, Flory. We really appreciate it. You've become, I don't know if either of us mentioned this in harassing you to come on our podcast, but you've become like a bingo line in our like, I should have checked beforehand, but like you've come up in almost every single episode.
Almost every single one.
Excuse me? Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Making
So
a
you're,
gal's year. Thank you.
Yeah,
I feel very
we've been, like-
honored. I don't even know the context, but
It's always
it's
good.
all-
It's always Flory. Oh, you know what would Flory do kind of thing.
Yeah.
okay, too kind. I'm so honored. Thank you.
Quite literally. Like we talk about, there's like 5 rotating go-tos.
Yeah.
And it's becoming like its own language.
Yeah.
And I've had someone recently be like, I feel like I understand the language now. Like when you mention Simone, it's like this thing. When you mention Flory, it's like this thing or whatever.
Yeah.
There's like a code that's starting to happen.
Yeah. We have like our what's the word? Our like our choir that we refer to, our leaders.
Yes.
What is the word I'm thinking of? I don't know. Whatever.
Our sources, of course.
Sources. Muses.
Yeah.
Muses was the word I'm looking for. Choir.
Muses, that's better.
So blessed to be in this community.
Well,
Thank you.
Of
Oh
course.
my gosh, of course. I thought, so I don't know, like I was thinking, how do we all know each other? We all know each other from the internet in a funny way, which was like the first thing I thought. I was like, oh, that's, I don't know. I think it's so funny as somebody who loves to complain about the internet. I also love to just make like 3D human connections out of it at the same time. And I was like, oh, I should really stop yelling at the sky about the thing that I do. But is that right? I met Jacque on, I know Flory from Jacqueline. And then I've met Jacqueline. Wait, I don't even remember now. Instagram for certain.
You and I?
Yeah.
Phoebe, yes, we met on Instagram.
Yes, I know. I'm saying that, but I'm just saying, how did the two of you know each other?
Oh, okay. So I attended an event that Christy invited me to.
Oh, yes. Friend of the pod, Christy.
Might not have invited me to, but friend of the pod, Christy, who was just like post an event. I was like, oh, this is interesting. I'm gonna come to this. And then Flo, you were either, it was poetry, yeah, that you did. Yes, Flory.
I did not do poetry,
or did you do both? Did you do 2 things? I can't remember.
I believe I did a mini medi with a little bit of either a discussion or like a little practice offering.
Yes.
But but you remember the poetry because I was nestled between, I think, like poetry and music. It was very magical.
God, this sounds like a great night.
It was really lovely.
It was in support of AAPI artists. Was amazing.
Oh gosh, that sounds gorgeous.
It was great. It was a fun time. And then I was like, whoa, from that meditation or that interaction. And then I went down like Rested Revolution space.
Rested Revolution
lane. And yeah, and then I was like, wow, so much of what I was doing at the time was helping artists with all the things around rest. Not helping, but like exploring those things. And that was like a pain point in the group. And so I was like, why not bring the wonderful Flory in? And then Flory did an amazing workshop with all of us artists, Phoebe. It was so good.
Yeah, so I think it's funny, like we've all had the opportunity to work with each other, like independently, individually, and well, this is really the first time we're doing a thing together. You do so many different things, and I really appreciate, and when I see other multi-hyphenates out in the world, I'm like, oh, there she goes. Like, it is possible. I'm not the only fucking idiot that can't decide on on one thing to explore. So yeah, like what maybe a more apt question is, what are you exploring right now, Flory?
Oh, I love it. Here we are. I am currently exploring just like an invitation, really. I feel like my invitation has broadened and really almost softened or loosened, but the invitation, especially through the Rested Revolution, still stands for like, how do we create time and space for being, really? And I think that is such a vast, set of possibilities and universes. So it's like, I say being, but of course I literally mean anything and everything almost at the same time. And that's where, our connection is to each other, to ourselves. So I'm currently not very active online, especially with social media and the Instagram. I feel very much like you are at the moment, Phoebe, around like, I don't know. It's an ambivalent relationship, really.
That's a good word.
And yet, I think if I kind of have a reference of my creative being, I understand that I'm currently taking my own medicine, kind of, tending to myself and currently living and learning through it before an interaction or, for lack of a better word, some sort of output or offering. And so tending to my own unrest and restlessness, both in my skin, physically, somatically, psychosocially, all of it. No big deal. We're just these sentient creatures. And at the same time, just like really being here for what's in front of me right now. And it's been a really interesting year. I was actually just reflecting as we kind of close the calendar year, at least. There have been some deep shifts just around what I was kind of holding myself accountable to express or to explore. And so creatively, my art and design practice is kind of moving into a certain flow that is actually more selective and narrow, I guess. I've currently picked up the craft of machine tattooing. So I have experience in stick and poke, kind of just, throughout the past few years for very select people in specific contexts. And the medium of being able to be in these intimate, micro containers with individuals to essentially ink sentiment or sigil in skin has kind of also intersected with just how much I feel, collective healing is possible and here and needed and accessible. And so I'm finding myself letting go of some of my design studio's offerings in a way so that I can both, have more time and space to be tattooing and creating again in this way. And at the same time, just recognizing that, after a decade of like very specific mediums as well, I'm ready to just be learning and fumbling and playing a lot more. So yeah, that's kind of just been my current space. I feel like that was a really long-winded answer. And I appreciate you holding space for me to kind of reflect in the process.
Well, that's what it is, right? To speak for myself, and I try to always do that, but I think everything, to me, something I hold very true is like everything is an experiment, and I can only find that out by doing. And it isn't, it can never be like a projected idea of what I think that's supposed to look like, whether that's like a career path or a project or a relationship or a collaboration or whatever it is. It has to be, it's a very physical thing. And it's so interesting to bring up tattooing in that way, because I was I was telling a friend, I got a very large tattoo done on my leg a little over a year ago. And she was like, oh, it's so beautiful. I really love it. And I was like, this is, you know, maybe the most like aesthetically pleasing, beautiful, like giant tattoo I have. I have no emotional connection to it. And the like wackadoodle junky things that maybe look like scribbles on my body. And not like, you know, everything needs an emotional connection, but it's not even like what the image represents, but the time and place and human being that I was. And like the version of me, like the version of Phoebe that goes to her friends from art school's basement to go get like this tattoo, like that afternoon is the important piece of it. And so it's like, it's this weaving of, and it's funny, it's like, oh yeah, we do happen to be physical. It's like this weaving of like, oh yeah, I am in this body for right now is that like pathway, is the way that we weave through it. So it's like, yeah, whether it's a design practice or whether we're teaching meditation or whether we're tattooing or getting tattooed, it's just like, how am I taking like my flesh through this thing and like respecting my body, like as like a, you know, my home, my vessel.
And you're traveling. Yeah, you are the traveling vessel, really. And there's so many layers of experience.
Yeah.
It's interesting because I feel like the biggest revelation I had this year, because I actually encountered a lot of like surprise grief around what it meant to, you know, essentially format, right, the amount of space that design is going to take up in my life versus art. As much as we could quantify it, I also work much more intuitively and non-verbally in the way of like trusting, right, the ebb and flow, trusting the timing, the calling, the endings. And I realized for the previous decade, I'd been trying so hard to model what is often sold in our culture to essentially make my art work for me. And I was trying to lead my art to, you know, contribute to my livelihood. I was trying to lead my art to persuading certain people, you know, what I had to say was of XYZ value, or that this story was happening XYZ, on and on, right? Very contextual, very relative, subjective. And the revelation was, oh, like that hasn't been working. So actually it's time for the art to lead me. And so there's something really interesting about that shift for me in, as I mentioned earlier, really taking my own medicine. It's a very hard pill to swallow. It's been bitter. It's been laughing, crying, hard and messy. And I think there's something to be said about having some connection to that, like part of our humanity or our mortality, right? Like leaving just enough understanding to know that there isn't enough understanding.
Yeah.
So it's always really interesting to kind of reflect this with loved ones who perhaps have a different perspective or approach to things. And I always kind of end up being in this place of like, whenever I need to change, you know, I was recently actually with a girlfriend who's about 12 years older than I am. So we do have a bit of a generational gap. And we're both, with that 12-year gap, we're both in Chinese astrology, both horses. And her question to me was like, you know, you as a millennial, how do you move around so much? Like, what is that all about? And it was just a genuinely curious, like, dude, please enlighten me. Like, this is so strange. And I realized, you know, I realized I had the same answer I did even in my mid-20s, my early 20s. And for me, it's really, you know, I have the privilege of why not? And so as you've just said, it really is this manner of just showing up and like doing it to just see what happens, right? Whether or not we have expectations, whether or not there's some sort of destination or goal or outcome or results, it's just, I've really begun to intimately understand that the, I guess, like fear or pain or difficulty with things remaining the same far outweighs the fear, the pain, the, you know, uncertainty of like not knowing what could be. So that's been like a very interesting kind of set of discomfort to navigate while I've been orienting and like, yeah, I'm in a bit of a liminal space. Like, yeah, I'm putting some things down and I'm, you know, I want to release them so that my hands are open for a little bit of this, but then it's also like, I have no idea what else I'm gonna be, you know, holding on to soon. And I feel really grateful and, you know, blessed to be able to even have just a sliver of this consciousness around it, to be like, whoa, like we're here right now. And you know, at the same time, that I think that really is a beautiful anchor and orientation for myself too, to be like, okay, I am still leading my own evolution and revolution, and I can do it in a way where I can be kicking and screaming one day, but eventually later that night, I can just kind of surrender and soften and like take a breath and, you know, receive support or just be in it or just, So I feel like it's been I'm currently in a strange like intersection of things that I guess I really thought were more distanced from each other. Yeah. But that's also really beautiful. And it kind of actually does give me like a deeper sense of like, ooh, something's aligning here. So this is kind of exciting too. So there's a little bit of like, you know, delight in that. So just feeling all the feelings with that.
There's like two things that are coming up in my mind as you're talking about this is like, and it's kind of my like perpetual, you know, what if gremlin or like, I always like they're just like old white men that like have residence in my head of you know, of all the things, but like, and maybe this isn't, whatever, this is my stuff, but like the like sustainability of not knowing, like what is that, how does that I don't know, have a role, does it play a role, what is the like I don't know, from like an outside perspective, like there can be like of like the people that are like, oh, what is this thing that you're trying to do, and what is the like maybe end goal, or like all of these things that ask for maybe rigidity or a clear answer. Like how, maybe my question is like, how do you like continue to like stay liquid or stay, I don't know, frictionless against those things?
I feel like it's in that paradox. Like to be fluid, you're going to touch friction, right? You're going to be in friction, yet it's your response to it that is that regenerative quality of fluidity, right? Because to be fluid is not you like dodging things and not touching it ever. To be fluid is to like touch something, but be able to like continue or right, go through, go around, or to stay on until there's another surface, pathway, force, whatever, that like creates a different momentum. So, you know, as I hear myself saying this, it's like, what a beautiful euphemism, so poetic. And yet, you know, emotionally, I've also just been through a lot of days where I've really had to like unspiral myself and be like, okay, like I conflated mindfulness with listening to my, you know, like measly mortal thinking brain spew out all these impossible questions and nitpicking at all the lack and, you know, warn me of all the scarcity so that I don't get hurt, or so that I don't, you know, humiliate myself, or so I don't like hurt someone else or whatever, right? The list goes on.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting because I think that also just keeps coming back to this like very, I guess, cryptic and unhelpful answer, which is just like, it's this practice of trusting yourself, right? Trusting yourself in each moment to be whatever you need to be at that moment.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think, you know, sometimes things only make sense in retrospect. Other times things only make sense in the present.
Yeah.
Right.
And that is also when we can thank our, you know, divine consciousness for working in this way, to be like, oh, damn, I got some foresight. I got some awareness. I got some, you know, ability to challenge myself. Right. So it feels like maybe it's always just this certain reference point, right, on this very large spectrum that we have access to. And then you just make the best choice you can, or you make the best choice you want.
Yeah.
And then that's, you know, like it sucks that it's that simple, but that's kind of like a huge part of it.
Well, but like, I don't think that there's anything simple about self-trust, because
Absolutely
there's everything to say, not even just everything to say to not do that, but like, you know, a really funny question I love to ask people is like, you know, how do you feel? When do you feel close to your intuition, or something like that? Or do you feel close to your intuition? And like, the number of people that say, oh, absolutely not, and that are also the same people that are like sitting next to me in yoga class or something like that, I find to be such a funny thing. But, you know, like if we're scrolling through Uber Eats and we're like, oh, fuck that, I don't want to have like pizza again or something like that, or like, oh, screw this dress, I hate the way it feels on me. Like, we'll listen to ourselves in very specific moments. But when it comes to like this, like, oh, I'm conflating, I love that idea of like conflating mindfulness with like the poison that's in your head. It's like, oh no, I never pay attention. I never have self-trust or something like that. It's like, what a I don't know. Do I want to say what a like sad thing to have, but like, yeah, like, I don't know, like the reclamation of that is like so powerful. It's so powerful. I don't even know if the word reclamation, it's like decolonization is what it is.
It's all of it. I would say reclamation is appropriate. Connection, reconnection, the maintaining of that connection, right? I think it is, like you said, like context is everything there. It really depends.
Yes. Yeah.
Where you are. But yeah, absolutely. It is something that I feel like as sentient beings, right? Like, it is going to be a practice only because we are inherently able to choose between so many different perspectives, between so many different options, right? So many different ways of being, because we have that capacity. But then with that capacity, that power, Spider-Man here, needs responsibility.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So I think that's also another piece, right? What is responsibility to each and every one of us? What does it mean to be accountable? What does it mean to be aware? What does it mean to be intuitive at all, or in touch with our intuition? I always find it really fascinating with conversations, you know, where people either don't consider themselves very intuitive, or they think that it's something else that they don't do. And yet, you know, outside in, I've witnessed them being so attuned and like so impactful because of their intuition. Right. So it's interesting how that kind of, much like the conflating of like, you know, when you want to be mindful, you there's a balance between watching what arises, but also choosing what you're actually thinking consciously, right?
Yeah.
Right.
And the prior being what I had not realized I'd actually fallen into was like I was watching a lot of the stuff, but it was like shitty stuff. It was like not fun stuff. And then it was like, oh, right, I got to do that. And also, right, be like very aware and responsible about what I am choosing to think about and how I am going to think about or XYZ, right? So.
Yeah.
I'm just chewing on that.
You've like said so much. You've said so much, as you do.
Bless you, Jacque. Bless you. I feel received. Thank you. Yep. Thank you for holding me.
Yes, I love it. I think what I have always found really like safe about being in company with you is your incredible integrity.
Yes.
Like,
yeah.
It's very, I'm like, oh, like it's safe here. It's like, and it's probably my own shit, but my point is that like you lead from such an really like so much integrity. And two things that you've said, one being that I want to go to, but one thing being that looking to your art for whatever, for life, for understanding, for money, for like kind of, you know what I mean? Like you said, wasn't working for you. How did you know that it wasn't working for you? Because I think there are a lot of artists that might feel that, but like don't know how to pin it down and go like, oh, this is not it. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Sure. I don't know if it's going to be what we want to acknowledge though, because it's like,
oh no, it never is, right?
I mean, no. It's been a long journey, and yeah, it really feels like, again, what Phoebe has touched upon is just that like experiential learning ultimately, right? So for me personally to be here, it feels like an accumulation of many, beautifully diverse opportunities that didn't lead where I thought they would go. All of that to kind of contribute to many learned skills, many, deeper ways for me to honor myself, my boundaries, my values. Speaking of integrity, right, that's really actually provided many very like visceral at times, right? Like very viscerally clear moments of what is or is not integrous for me, for my work, for my callings. All of that, plus essentially running to the end of the road, actually, So specifically in the context of what I had thought running a design studio would be for myself, while I'll clarify, I'm very clear on the people and projects that I want to work with. The studio itself, over the past, I want to say, year and a half, I went from actually very tangibly thinking like, oh, I need some production help. I'm a little bit burnt out on the actual like medium and craft itself, right? But let's keep the ball rolling. Like, let's see who else we can work with. I'm going to get support. I can, I had a wonderful like designer, wonderful support system, many collaborators that were great. And the fulfillment, the joy, the like, and like the very personal, right? Because of course, again, the people and projects I have endless love for. That always generates so much energy within me already.
Yeah.
Yet it's that relationship with yourself, right? Where like at the end of the week or the month, it was like, okay, something is missing, but it wasn't, more projects. It wasn't a specific brand. It wasn't a specific financial goal. It wasn't, it was none of that stuff. It was just like, oh, it's just not, I noticed it wasn't lighting me up in the same way.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so there's something to be said about being open to either play or to experiment always, because it actually provides you contrast. It gives you a reference point. And so, I'm coming through this year and a half. And then at the same time, my subconscious was like, for reals, again, in retrospect now, my subconscious was for reals, trying to convince me, don't be a quitter. You can't just drop out. Like, it must be something else. It's just you. Like, what if you made more money? Is it a money thing? Like, endless, quote unquote solutions, not solutions, but like endless questioning and at times like pretty gaslighty, right? Yeah. Like not a good time.
Totally.
And luckily, with me taking the risk to just be like, well, I'm going to start machine tattooing anyways. Right? Like and that's just my specific example, right? But like doing the thing anyways, right? Showing up for the why not and trying it anyways. I have been, just helping myself reorient. Essentially what happened was I was tattooing myself, felt really proud of my work, and I happened to be walking home from the studio space that day. But it was this full-bodied, like, but also physical, but it also like energetic, emotional, like connected to inner flow, like little flow. I hadn't felt so new at something in a way where I couldn't even fathom expectations or standards or anything. But there's just all the space for me to essentially get better if I wanted to. And, as just maybe an artist, as a creative, like to be able to work with my body, with my hands, right? To be able to be creating something and then altering this reality forever, my skin, this piece, whatever. I realized I hadn't felt that in a really long freaking time. And so, when you have like a dash of that with kind of this accumulated, like, not burnout in the classic, like, my cup is empty burnout, but just I've really, resourced long enough in these specific ways, and this isn't the type of fire I want to feed, right? This really just created such an impactful sensing within myself that it was like, oh, it like, we have such a privilege to be in a world where there is such vastness, right?
Yeah.
And it's really beautiful to be able to be paying attention to that, especially, with the world being the world. That's all I can say these days. I know I typed it to
the world is the world.
The world is the world. Yeah. I know we were crying about that just the other day, but like, with the world being the world, it's like, oh, here is, this little space of, here's this little source of nectar, right? That I can nourish myself in a specific way. And so it was that same night that it also finally clicked. I guess another part of my subconscious was like, oh, I don't have enough like resources to lead the art. I'm just supposed to show up and let the art lead me. Like, oh dang, right? And yet, again, I think for each and every one of us, we have such a unique understanding of what that means, right? Some of us have hit that and understand because we're like, oh yeah, I remember. somebody's going to listen to this and you're probably going to be like, that makes no sense. And like, how the fuck am I supposed to know? That just means I think you're not quite there yet. And keep going. Like, we're rooting for you. I'm rooting for you.
Yes, we are.
It's important. You deserve it. Right.
Yeah.
And yeah, just really, you know, balancing that too. I never want to make assumptions about other people because it is also such a privilege for me to have access to resources to be able to experiment and, you know, experience in this specific way. And right, like, for what it's worth, as far as this part of maybe you standing in your own way saying like, there's no way, or like, you're not allowed, or like, you possibly couldn't. For that part, like, I'm here to be like, okay, that's valid. We don't have to shove you out of the way. And I've got another set of questions for you, right? And it is kind of more in that realm of why not? It is more in that realm of like, what if, you know? It is in the realm of imagine all that you can't imagine and like how happy and joyful that could be compared to what you currently do know. And sometimes just acknowledging that part of what you do know is that you do know this isn't the right place for you, right? Or that this is simply transitionary, right? We're always going through transitions, like always. So that was really kind of I feel like that's like my ingredient list for like how all of that just getting like sloshed together really like shook me up to be like, oh, okay, you know, and of course, very real, right? It was a lot of like self-confrontation. It was a lot of like frustrated tears around like, why can't I just pull up my big girl pants and stick to it and like fucking get her done? Like, why not? You know, it was like a very, it's very different kind of why not? Like, why not me kind of why not? And so it's at least part of my process even, right? To go through all of that to really understand like, okay, we're actually excavating things right now. We're really, you know, we really do have to honor and grieve it and clean out all these dark corners and shadowy bits because it's time for something new to occupy my mental capacity, something new for me to orient towards. And the beautiful thing that I really want to offer here is this is where our community, where our loved ones, where people who really see us are, it is paramount. Because while I'm kicking and screaming, having this like existentialist crisis, literally everyone who knows me was like, okay, that makes total sense. Great. Like, what's the problem? And I'd be like, oh, right. Like just disrupting that. And then of course at the same time when I was like really a puddle, it was like, okay, Flo, let's take a look in the mirror and like set this straight. You're seeing some things a little bit warpy right now, and that's cool. We're here, and let me reflect back at you, you know, why this makes sense or why someone else outside of my own body and experience is so excited and is like so ready and, you know, there to cheer me on, right? And that really gets you through that whole like accumulation of like these really, I guess, like daunting feeling choices. And over time it does kind of just get you from one, you know, scary like step or milestone in the chasm to the next.
That is so beautiful. I think it speaks to how insidious, like when we talk about, I got real beef with like Instagram carousels and like the oversimplification of like pathologizing things.
Yes, thank you for going here, Phoebe.
Like the word burnout makes me want to throw a cup against a wall because it's one of those things where I just go like, are we actually talking? Okay, if it's this thing that we're all experiencing, and not to say I'm not like, which is a very real thing that we're all saying we're experiencing. Let's actually fucking talk about why and like what's at play here and who's in charge, like who's benefiting from all this shit, and like let's have conversations about those things. And what I think, like, you know, even somebody as enlightened and as attuned and paying attention as a Flory in the world.
Oh, goodness.
And like you're describing this experience that I think is, well, it's human. It's like human, like,
yes,
you know, it's,
yes.
and it's so easy to like look at anybody or anything and go like, oh, they got their shit together.
Yes.
You know, and hearing
it's
this
way more simple. Yeah.
yeah. Oh, absolutely. All I got to do, well, it's like this is what I'm saying. It's like, it's so insidious how these threads are where I just have to convince myself enough to be okay. I just have to, even though I've said like, you know, fuck this to all these things, I'm still going to like gaslight myself into just inserting myself into a different template. Now, I'm not going to choose A, but I will like break off my arm to fit into B. And even when we say we have all of these things in practice, you know, I'm doing my sun salutations, I'm eating my greens, I'm like putting my phone down before like 8 p.m. Oh, I still feel like shit. Why is this?
Yeah.
And it's so like, I don't know, it's like a root system, like entrapped in every single one of our organs. And so when we start to pull at this stuff, it's like, oh, of course, you know, is the thing that's always like, yeah, I don't know. It's like, okay, it's not burnout. It's everything. It's everything. And we're just going to call it something that we can put in 6 lines so we can sell it to each other.
Yeah, absolutely. I have, this is kind of where what I was going to say to you. So I want to put it in real quick before Flo responds, if you don't mind. Sorry.
Of course not. Please, I'm listening.
Yeah.
I'm here for you two too. So come on.
Yeah, of course. Because I've experienced being a part of the like complex of this on this side of like, if you just know yourself enough, or if you're just open enough, if you are in tune enough, like whatever that means, right? Like then you'll get the thing. Then you'll get the whatever it is, just like searching thing that you want. And I mean, it's problematic in so many ways because oftentimes in the carousels, it's about money,
yeah,
right? Or about like whatever, right? Like abundance, like whatever that is, for however that can be translated for you. But it's like this lie because we don't want to deal with what you're talking about, which is, okay, you do all of that, and then it brings up what you don't want, or it brings up scary, or it brings up shadowy, or it brings up hard, or it brings up uncomfortable, and then you're like, no, thank you, and then you run away. You know what I mean? Like, and no one talks about that because it's just like, know yourself, you know, get into your, like, your mindfulness, eat your greens, da la 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 la, and then you'll like have a dream princess life, like whatever. It's literally like bad, corrupt storytelling, whatever. My point is that what you're explaining and what you're bringing to this, I'm so grateful for, because we do not talk about what happens on the other end and if it's icky and gross and hard and complicated. Yeah. So thank you.
Thank you for being you, Jacque. I feel you. I mean, you're speaking to nuance, right? And ultimately, the way that I've been able to articulate it so far is that, you know, it's so interesting that in your examples, right, enough. So enough is a quantity, right? It's like it's a very specific measure of some form of quantity, basically. Yeah. And as we all know, being in this world now, literally every waking moment of our lives, we're being sold something that promises to like fill that measure of enoughness. And so it feels like an essence that I'm still trying to figure out how to properly address through the Rested Revolution, whether it's, you know, in the contemplations I can offer people and or when I'm in an actual container with others and we are in deep inquiry and we are relating and like just taking that time and space, right, to really see, feel, sense, examine in a particular way. And it comes to, can we orient not with quality, or sorry, not with quantity, but with quality?
Yeah.
Let me rephrase that. So yeah, can we not orient to quantity of enoughness or measure what is tangible and seen, but actually go through more sensing of quality? Because quality actually holds nuance. There's something to be said about the fact that what is qualitative by nature cannot be quantified, right? And so that is actually what we need for our own humanity, especially in that relationship with self, right? Whether you start there or end up there, we know it goes both ways. It's more about, why is it that we keep chasing after quantity when like those quantities are essentially impossible or they don't fit, right? Because what is quantitative for one person is not for another. And we're like, oh, that's so trivial, of course. Yet this complex that you're speaking to, people are just deep in it, like day in and day out, right? And that's a piece that's really become clear in the peak of, you know, global health crises and the peak of our human rights violations and unrest. We got to stop focusing on that quantity, right? We got to stop focusing on that metric and actually do the work of like being in the quality, being in the sensing. And I think that is one portal to really open into the nuance of, like, how does it really feel, right? Who are we really when when nobody is watching, when we're not watching somebody else, like when we are alone? What is that like, right? And of course, there are some beautiful universal connections that actually really strengthen us and really help us heal way more than what may be very different or unique. And yet, of course, we know that that same distinction also has the same, right, like ability and capacity to heal us and move us forward and like really, really just like create what it is we're looking outside of ourselves, within ourselves. So it's interesting. And I think this is kind of that intersection that I was talking about.
Yeah.
Because I think as creatives, as artists, right, that shows up too, but it's now inverted, right? It's more about, as you'd mentioned, we'll just use a very kind of simple analogy of, you discover something, right? You turn the stone over and you're like, bleh, like so many creepy crawlies, so much dirt, there's some mold, there's like shit you did not expect. Excuse me. And, you know, even if you let that stone drop, it's just going to squish all of them, but they're still there. So it's like, what is that? What does that mean, right? In your art to like come up against that. And I love that, you know, the three of us have also been in different contexts together where that translates directly in how we work. That translates into the way we run business and like engage in commerce with others, right? That is relationship. So there's this like really interesting invitation that is present, right? So that for people who are paying attention, for people that do notice these things and who are like, what in the fuck? Like, truly, it's like, great. Like, we're here. Awesome. And now what? Right. And you know, social media too, it is just limited in that way, right? Because language can only go so far. it will pathologize. It will, probably only have a certain level of interpretation or a certain, distance that it can reach each of us as people. So I think what you're speaking to, Jacque, is like, how do we have like more honest conversations with each other, ourselves, and then what is it really that we're addressing in that, not as like the symptoms of quote unquote burnout. Because I feel you, Phoebe. Anytime anybody's like, I don't know, for me, I'm kind of just like, are we still talking about what burnout is? Like, I don't understand. Like, can we, like, we can move along. Like, I think how we can heal each other and help each other through our own processes is actually more about, oh, why are you burnt out? Right? Like, where in our systemic culture and design, what's failing all of us there, right? Versus like, oh, I'm burnt out. Like, each of us just need to like really go to therapy lots. And it's like, while therapy is life-changing and absolutely a resource we all need, therapy alone will not actually change the world very much at this point. Right.
Yeah. Capitalism does like a lot of different numbers on our psyches, but I think the like packaging of a very deep, complicated, personal, nuanced, like discomfort is the thing that truly fails us. So I'm trying to like avoid the like and with that in mind, I'm going to say that. And then also at the same time, try to avoid the oversimplification of a very deep, nuanced tale that you're telling us. But the thing I'm wondering how you stay engaged, you personally, Flory, stay engaged enough in that discomfort to be able to go, all right, hands up. Like, I surrender. Like, let's gear shift enough.
I've been trying to figure that out myself, honestly. I'm like, why am I like this? Why are you like this?
I'll let you know as well.
Thank you. Yeah, I love it. Team project now. Group project. Again, so far at this point in time, there's like a small handful of elements that contribute to it. One of them being, I just, for as long as I can remember, maybe it's a little bit of this like seeker archetype in me, but like there's something about actually how distracted I become when there's like when there is something that comes up that is this form of friction, right? I'm very like, oh, but why? And I'm just like, but why? And I am truly like really curious about it. I'm just literally like, where did this come from? Like, I would like to understand it, because again, there is just this drive in me around like responsiveness, right? Responsibility. Yes, that's informed by me holding myself to what being, integrous means in this life, how I'm moving through the world. And, I'm also, with that, I'm very blessed to like be in a community where people are also very integrous. So it's like, there's a lot of really valuable feedback in that. And practically speaking, I think I've just been through like my right amount of shit where even in the darkest, like scariest, most overwhelming times, I managed to hold on to like this one thread of just trusting and knowing and understanding that it's all worth it.
Yeah.
So like, I'm worth it, right? I'm worth the, let's say, like inclusive, like joy, delight, expansion, growth, healing, liberation that will come with inquiry, right? This inquiry, this curiosity, and just through lived experience, right? It's like, okay, like Flo, you've gone through this before, right? even creative process, let's say, right? It's part of that, like, specific muscle of trusting that you understand around, like, okay, so it's going to be nonlinear, fucking fine. Like, I'll settle for that. Right? Like, you're like so disappointed. You're like, ugh. Like, why am I
not a robot?
Yeah, exactly. Why am I not a robot? Why can my life not just unfold like a beautifully cut movie plot? Like, you know, so there is just that where it's like, I guess, again, this orientation towards possibility, really, right? Of like, there's just something around the optimism of there is something different, right? There is something else possible. And not in like an escapist way, but in like okay, eventually over time, right? What does that look like? And then I get to choose, you know, what's in my power to like influence that right now versus is there something else I need to pay attention to, right? What is kind of in the way, right, of me feeling that alignment, that restedness, that like clear conscience, that, you know, full embodiment.
Yeah.
And so that is usually kind of the majority. And honestly, the rest, it's just sheer exhaustion. It's like, you know, it's like, it's literally just me really admitting and allowing, like, I can't take this anymore. Or like, this isn't working, right? Or like, all the messages, no, like, no. So therefore, I need to also share that no with like things outside of me, people outside of me. And, you know, instead of pushing through, instead of like running on empty anyways, instead of like trusting in, I guess, an illusion that someone else wants to pitch me, and instead just like really being like, you know, love that vision, great optimism on your part. And right, sometimes, most of the time, we're really just having our own experiences with something specific, right? Like, it's, that's usually, you know, what gets me there. And part of that exhaustion as well is just in this kind of non-linear way, I've noticed I kind of tend to have a pattern of like wanting to know what's at like the bottom of the well, right? So it is part curiosity. It is part of a different kind of self-loving pushing, not to like sugarcoat it, but it's like, you know, by the time I hit rock bottom, I look around and I'm like, yup, okay. Yeah. And then that's when it's like, you know, that's just how I process things. Another girlfriend and I were actually talking about how we're both very similar in that, let's say in decision making, right? We take a long time to process. We like basically grieve right then and there before we're going to release and step away from something. Yet we've done this time and time again because we've found that what that enables is once we finally do step through the doorway, there's no looking back. You don't even have to do a peripheral check, right? Like that's just our way of feeling really clear enough to like take that one step, even if the step is into another abyss, even if the step is into the dark. It's just more of like the honoring what is here right now, because it is here right now. And then kind of just knowing that you're going to have to deal with other things later. So you deal with other things later. And so, you know, now that I'm kind of reflecting on that specific process, there's that's an essence of what I talk about in restedness, right? It's not saying that like, you know, you're going to 100% be like chock full of energy, ready for like the literal unknown of like being alive as a human. Yet it's about that like weird, untouchable, I don't know. I don't even know if it's human, right? But like that kind of quiet soul space of just like, this is it, right? Like in every moment, this is it. without the not enoughness, without the there could be more, or I need there to be more, or without it like too muchness, right? It's kind of just this like weird magical, I don't know, force fields of just being exactly as you are in the here and now, yet beyond our current understanding of physics and quantum reality, you're also already unbound by that.
Yeah.
You both are not.
Yeah.
I know you feel. Yeah. So again,
yeah.
this is just the best way that I can articulate it, and yet it's kind of the closest. Again, because it's a sensing, right? It's felt, because it's the same way burnout doesn't sum it up, right? It's beyond like, oh, feeling sad. It's beyond feeling devastated. Like there's still a very full body, right? Energetic, emotional, mental, physical experience to these feelings that we have names for, right? That we have language for. So
language
there's something, there's something about that lack of duality, even like that that multiplicity, the like unseen is still very present. Form and formless are both here. Did I answer your question?
I know. Yes and no, and like the most part, like that. What is this question? How do you feel? Okay, like gosh, what an insane person question that we're asking each other. But like, the circumstances that we find ourselves in, with the world being the world. That's beautiful.
I'm glad you think so. Thank you.
I'm sitting on the other side of this and I'm like, Jacqueline does not like that.
Oh, tell us how you really feel. I'm so intrigued.
I'm like,
tell us how you really feel, Jacque. I'm very intrigued now.
I don't know. I mean, there's, like you're saying, it's an incredible amount of patience and like not like patience, but not for anything. Like
for yourself.
Does that
no?
Well, yes.
Okay.
But that's yes. Like it's
for
like
anything.
that's what I don't like about it. Like that's what I mean. That's what I don't like. Like that's a thing. There's something in me that's like no, like that. Again, it's the enoughness, right? Like I hear and I'm like, that's not enough. Me's not enough. Like, I feel
you.
Yeah. That's so. Mm-hmm.
Well, I think that speaks to. I was writing the other day on like. I had COVID. Well, I still do technically, but I was getting over. I went for like my first walk after like finally having like enough energy, and and intellectually, I understand this world is not built for anything but a very specific pace, a very specific, very narrow target of productivity and worth. I could read. I'll tell you all the books. Tell you the podcasts. I'm sure I could write a very smart person essay about the topic. But when actually confronted with, I cannot physically walk today the same way that I did 4 days ago, 5 days ago, whatever is being required of me in this moment. I think when we're hit with the physicality of these things, of like not able to like keep going, it's the only time that lesson will actually, I think, where we have the opportunity to like really learn that lesson and integrate it. And even then I go like, what do I do? What do I make? What do I create? What is the action that is oriented around this thing that is telling me, sit the fuck down on this bench in the sunbeam only. And do not get on the trail. No, you big dingle. And still instead, like, this metaphor is perfect. I was just trying to go for a hike. Still, I keep walking, and I think being confronted with that, like, friction and And Flory, I love, when I think of you, I think, and what Jacque was saying too, like I think of somebody who really embodies not just their values and the things that they say, but like the mission, the thing that they're trying to actually create. And so it's like, are you actually going to be congruent with all the fucking TED Talks? Are you actually going to like embody all of these lessons that you keep being smacked over the head with over and over again? Because I think the alternative is just being hit down so hard you can't get back up again.
Tale as old as time, right?
Yeah,
like,
and it's
how many
just
people require that exact, like, literal physical crisis until there's even a consideration, right?
Yeah.
Some people go on the same way. Most people, I think more than half, I would assume, will shift in one way or another, subtly, maybe vastly, but yeah, it is really interesting.
Yeah.
And yeah, I don't know. I've asked myself, like, oh, is it because I'm such a wuss with like pain, and like, is it because I'm so incompatible with discomfort that I'm almost like averse to it, you know, like proactively? And yet that doesn't really quite feel like it, right?
No, and I don't believe in that.
I think there's something about reorienting again and moving away from that binary that leans on that dominant definition or status quo, where it's more like, no, actually it's because I love myself, I love this life, I love vitality, I love my community enough that like I can be in, you know, embodied gratitude always, I can be celebrating always, I can already have access to enjoying it, right? Not counting the milestones, or like not making these formal plans, not, you know, colonially like earning something that deems me finally free to like have again a measured amount of like quantifiable happiness or contentness or pride or whatever, right? And of course it's hard though, right? Like I can name these things, but you've said it, to actually be in practice of it is really, really difficult. Like, you know, we're literally working against like the biopsychosocial like wiring to go against that, to like challenge that, to see that as an invitation, to like consciously, you know, be aware of it. It's really tiring. It takes a lot of energy. And so that's, you know, that's a choice to make. And it's not about doing it in a certain way or a certain amount, but it's like doing it in your way, right? Because only you will know. And yet that is all that really counts. And so that's part of that invitation that I really hold to people, where it's like, yeah, you know, like I started the Rested Revolution, and yet each of us actually are leading this movement day in and day out. Right. And even if you are struggling, or like you've made a choice that's not that, like you're still leading it, you know, just inherently, because as long as you are deliberate, right, that's really all you can do. It's, you know, we have too many forms of reality that not one single dimension can contain, not one single person or one source can deem it, right? And that can actually be a really beautiful thing. Again, it's 2022. Let's be real, 98% of the time it's really fucking overwhelming, and like you'd rather like, let's not, but it's still real, right? Like that's
absolutely.
how it is.
I think if you choose, even in those moments, if it's like, well, I could I don't even know what the alternative action is. I could leave my own personal revolution and choose to sit down in whatever kind of capacity it is. Or I can, Vanessa and Nick Lachey have a new offering for me. And so on Netflix, so I shall, you know, I'll vote for that one. Like, I truly believe that those are spaces, or like, you know, sitting down or like, you know, calling a friend or not calling a friend. I think that those are spaces where we can become resourced enough, you know, and that like, I don't even know, like, calling it the word enough, but yeah. Reality TV, I do believe, has a space in like this.
Hey,
in the revolution is what I'm trying to say.
No, absolutely. And I mean, that's part of the relating, right? The relation, the part of being in relationship, right?
Yep.
There are very few things, if any at all, again, with realities, right? It also comes to truth. It really just depends how you look at something. It depends on what criteria you're forming some sort of opinion or statement about, right? There's really nothing less or inferior, right? But between different methods. That was Nova. I don't know if you could hear her. But there's nothing, I think there's this really interesting piece around, if you're choosing to veg to reality TV, like, because it's a certain type of input or whatever, right, that you're partaking in. Again, that actual form or activity doesn't matter. It's still about how you're showing up to it.
Yeah.
Right. There is such a thing as healthy escapism and getting using this relativity, right, to orient yourself or to like consider different possibilities. Great. That's actually so needed. I mean, if I didn't have my loved ones, like, oh my God, again, part of when I hit like the rock bottom that I talk about, a lot of the other times it's because I'm like, I'm so annoyed with myself. Like, oh my God, like I need to do something different. Okay. Like, time to receive some support, find a different human who is not me, because clearly I'm just like, just swirling, right? I'm just a little cyclone in the bottom of like the toilet bowl. And it's like, it's not great. So yeah, I think there's something, right, to be said about just intention and like the power that it has with anything that we do, really.
Yeah.
And with intention, it kind of feels like awareness is definitely kind of like interwoven with that somewhere. I don't know if you can be intentional without being aware, at least to some degree, right? So yeah, it is really, again, it is really nuanced. So nuanced.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the binary wants us to be like, it's this way or it's that way.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Yeah.
And really it can be all of it.
Yeah.
And we need it.
Yeah.
Like, we as a social like community, we need it to be all of it, because there is no time, or maybe, I don't know, Flo might argue this, that there is, but I feel a pressure sometimes of like, there's no time for it to be like one way or another, for it to be clean, like put together in the way you want it to be. And then you can be invested in the thing. It's like, no, like, it has to happen all at once.
Almost constant.
I mean, in our modern day and age, right? Because it's like one of the first things that I cover with, groups that I work with is like, first and foremost, I want to be really clear. If we're talking about restedness, there is no like, real expectation that anybody's going to suddenly magically carve out like 6 hours to like, quote unquote, do nothing or to slow down. Like, that's also not, that also doesn't translate into much value, right? Like, life is very full, like, and that can be also for the better, right? That's also really beautiful. We can actually kind of lean into that sometimes too, right? But again, I think this is also where maybe like the myth of like resting is equivalent to either nothing or like super still or slow comes out, is because again, what's dominant or status is currently like a very certain speed and like quite demanding, quite frantic. And then of course anything else within that relativity will be slower, will be stiller. And yet there's something to be said about, well, slowing down is also more of like that accessible pathway for a lot of people because it requires that intention and awareness, right? And if you're like, if you are juggling so many things, if your attention and energy are completely divested, well, again, we're human, right? Like, of course you're not going to be able to feel very rested, right? Like, of course you're not, feeling like you're here right now, because you're not really. And that can either be a burden or a gift, right? So there's something about that being like a level of that kind of like deliberation as well, like to start, right? So it is really interesting because that same space is where things come up, right? That same space is where maybe things settle enough and it's like, oh, I see that, you see the mud or the stones of discomfort and other big things in the water, versus if the tide's just ripping in and out, like, it's great, it's kicking up all the sand, like, that's just how it looks, great, like, we have no idea, right? And then all of a sudden we like step on an urchin and then we're blaming like this urchin, when really it's like, well, where are we really going? Like,
what are you doing in the water?
What are we doing? We could have been swimming above the urchin. Both would be way happier, right? Like that's kind of like maybe one way to like look at that.
I love it. Well, I thank you so much, Flo. Like that. Just
thank you both,
and thanks for letting us, as always, hog. We keep meaning we gotta extend our interview time.
No, I love it. I'm here. Like I said, here for you too. So it's been a joy and pleasure always.
You always bring the treasure trove.
Yes, you do. Yeah. I needed to hear this stuff. I needed to hear this and also be here with you today. So thank you.
Thank you. That means the world. Thank you.
It's a real pleasure. Is there any, like, where do people find you? Anything that you're working on? Any plugs?
Do you want?
Do you want?
I was about to say, I don't know if that's the vibe right now.
No, I mean, always welcome. I can't guarantee it's a yes, everybody come in, yet everyone come by. Like, I'm here. Ooh. I would love to support. I love connecting. I want to learn more. I want to, I'll do what I can. I can always refer you on too. Studio side, Flory.Huang on Instagram, FloryHuang.studio online. And I'm doing a lot more strategic design and development there. I actually have a very passionate vision around what it means to be an integrous business. So if anybody's listening, happy to chat on that. And that's bolstered by my branding, marketing, communications backgrounds, plus the Rested Revolution. So therestedrevolution.com, lots of free resources. And it features amazing folks like Phoebe. And Jacque has yet to debut, but here's a little foreshadowing.
Oh my God, chuck her into the water. I'm constantly yelling at Jacque.
I know. Jacque's been doing stuff though. It's all good, but in time. So just wiggly eyebrows.
I am
it'll be
the
there
opposite
soon.
Of Flo and Jacqueline. So like,
just shoving her out of the nest.
Get in. What are you doing?
Oh, thank you. I love all of it though. Thank you. But no, Flo, you have to come back and we have to talk about that. Because come back and talk about integrous business.
Hey,
for sure.
Anytime. I would love to. I know that the world needs it. I know that people like us, that's honestly the way to like really show up wholly.
Thought about that. Yeah, I had not thought about that piece of that puzzle with the three of that intersection at all.
Yes.
So I'm like, da-da-da-da-da.
Hey, this is perfect.
Fine. I can make decisions.
Yes, I would love to. Truly. It's my real honor to be able to.
I'm so excited to go see that. go see what's brewing over there.
Ooh. Yes, take a peek. Let me know. And then, of course, I'm mostly on what is called the West Coast these days, and I'm letting my art lead me. So there's also that. This is my invitation for anyone who wants to co-create. I approach these very exuberantly, very enthusiastically, and at the same time, like, hold a lot of space in my heart for just how, like, sacred, you know, these collaborations are. So whether it's the actual, like, you know, tattooing from custom design through to the ink, or even if you just want to design, like, I've done that too, and it's freaking really, really bomb, and it makes my days. So here for it. Cool. So that's me actively inviting it.
Great.
Thank you.
There we go. We found the invitation.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much again, Flo. Appreciate it.
Appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Do You Ever Feel Like?
Follow this chaos wherever you get your podcasts.
Our artwork is by Simon Peng. Do You Ever Feel Like is produced by Jacqueline Wills
and Phoebe Taylor. You can follow us on Instagram at DoYouEverPod.
You can write to us at doyoueverpod@gmail.com. Okay, bye!